and welcome to this year's Mjadala Africa 2024 debate. I am delighted to be moderating this session. I am Abe Agina in Kigali, Rwanda. Mjadala in the local African Swahili language means to debate. And in that spirit, we welcome you to this fireside chat. In the next few minutes, we will be bringing to you a high-level panel titled Shaping Africa's Future. Insights from Africa Union Commissioners on Growth, Sustainability and Security. In this compelling fireside chat, three esteemed African Union Commissioners delve into the continent's most pressing challenges and opportunities, from economic integration and renewable energy to health, equity, education and peace building. Discover how these leaders are charting a transformative path for Africa's sustainable growth and resilience. I'm thrilled to bring forth this amazing panel. First off, Her Excellency Ambassador Josepha Sako, Commissioner for Agriculture, Rural Development, Blue Economy and Sustainable Environment. Also, we have His Excellency Ambassador Albert Mushanga, Commissioner for Economic Development, Tourism, Trade, Industry and Mining. Last but not least, Her Excellency Samate Sesuma Minata, Commissioner for Health, Humanitarian Affairs and Social Development. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to begin with Your Excellency Albert Mushanga. How can Africa's economic integration through the AfCFTA be leveraged to drive growth in industries like tourism and mining, while at the same time ensuring sustainable practices across the continent?
Thank you very much. It's a very, very good question. I'll go by taking you into history. When our leaders were founding the Organization of African Unit in 1963, some of them made a very good statement calling for Africa to eventually come up with an African common market. That idea was given life by the establishment of regional economic communities across Africa, such as the Economic Community of West African States, the Southern African Development Community, the East African Community, and several others. Then, around 1985, we had the Lagos Plan of Action for the Economic and Social Development of Africa, which was running up to the year 2000. Before the end of the Lagos Plan of Action, our leaders came up with the agreement establishing the African Economic Community, or the Abuja Treaty, which had a vision of creating an African economic community. Then in 2012, it was decided to enhance intra-African trade. And part of that element was agreement to establish a continental free trade area. And in 2015, our leaders in Johannesburg came up with principles to negotiate, to guide the negotiations. And I came back on board on 2017 when negotiations started, and we were told that the negotiations should end by December 2017. We met the deadline. The agreement was opened for signature on the 21st March in 2018 in Rwanda, Kigali, Rwanda. Now, we negotiated the agreement in such a way that it will have building blocks towards a common market. We have the framework agreement itself, and then we have got the protocols on the trade in goods and trade in services. Beyond that, we have the protocol on trade, on investment, a protocol on intellectual property rights, a protocol on competition policy. Then we also have the standalone legal agreements and programs. We have the protocol on the free movement of people, right of establishment and right of residence, and we've got the single African air transport market. All these are building blocks towards an African common market. So on the basis of that, we secured agreements from the heads of state and government to come up with the readiness assessment was an African common market / customs union. The document is going to be considered by the ministers tomorrow and on Friday.
Thank you for that detailed response, Your Excellency. I'd like now to bring in Her Excellency Samate Sisuma Minata. Well, my question to you is in regards to how is the African Union addressing health equity to ensure that vulnerable populations have access to quality healthcare services across the continent?
Thank you so much for this important question. Across the continent, vulnerable population include as women and girls, children, adolescent person living with disabilities, the elderly person, refugees, and forced displaced person in general, like IDPs, people living in poverty, and those living with HIV, non-communicable diseases or mental health condition. You know, Africa, we face a conflict, forced displacement due to climate change, and we have informal settlement with poor people living there. Those impacted by climate change, all these people will remain disproportionality vulnerable person. Now, how to address the health issues? We need to address this question of equity about this vulnerable group. That require for us a very coordinated action to be inclusive and sustainable effort, something African Union Commission has prioritized for these vulnerable people through the Africa Health Strategy. We have our strategy 2016, 2030, and our agenda 2063, the Africa we want, with the first aspiration 1, about well-nourished citizens enjoying equitable access to quality health care, and these people very healthy citizen of our continent.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency Samate. And health and agriculture are somewhat interlinked. Let me now bring in Ambassador Josepha Sako. How can Africa's agricultural transformation align with climate resilience and food security to ensure sustainable rural development for Africa?
As we were all aware that Africa at this particular moment stands at a pivotal moment in its journey towards agri-food system transformation, which will be guided by the ambitious goal that the African Union and its member states are setting through the CADEP-Kampala Declaration. As you are aware, we've been implementing the flagship program of African agricultural transformation for the past 2 decades, and we started the decades. The first decade was the Maputo Declaration, whereby our head of state and government decided that we should improve the food security on the continent, as well as invest in the agricultural sector, and get the set a goal, a target of 10% of the public expenditure to be accorded to the agricultural sector.
Excellencies, as we take our last round of questions, what in your view is the significance of the debate, especially in enhancing institutional governance, meritocracy, and transparency at the organization?
The debate is most welcome. It's very appropriate, and it's very, very, very good. When we're opening up the positions for leadership of the African Union, The leaders, first and foremost, give direction. They indicate to the Africans where they want to take the African Union and Africa at large. So it's up to the people to decide whether they agree with the vision of the leader or they do not disagree.
This debate is, as I said at the beginning, it is a decision of our head of states, because you cannot have a continent that is endowed with 60% of arable land, cultivated arable land. You cannot have a continent that you have, a region. When you talk globally, Africa is the region that has the youngest population. So we have the women forced to work on this sector. You cannot have all these natural resources like water, you have sun, you have a lot of rivers, you have lakes, and you have seas and oceans, and yet you are not feeding your citizens. So that's why it is important for us to come with proper policy, proper strategies, and proper projects, on this agricultural sector. But today I can say, after 2 decades of implementing the CADEP program, or the CADEP flagship program, which is a flagship program for the implementation of Agenda 2063. So we cannot have 2 decades of having it and still have the status where we are.
Thank you so much for that question. We cannot have the Africa we want without transparency, and our development cannot be without meritocracy and the issue of governance. Governance is very important in what we are doing at the level of African Union, and also our member states. We need to prioritize advocacy for domestic resources. We are always requesting our partner to finance. We need to, for good governance, to mobilize internally, and we talk about health issues. I see our medicine agency, we are operationalizing. If we don't commit, we don't work in base of transparency in what we are doing, our member state will be discouraged, because they are putting a money for our big project. If we are not governing well, there is no transparency at all level, it might be difficult for us to achieve the Africa we want, with well-nourished people, healthy people. We want to finish with a humanitarian situation, nor social aspect with old people, vulnerable people. It's for achieving our ambition in Africa, we require a high-level political commitment.
A big thank you to our esteemed panelists. And with that, we wrap up our Mjadala Africa Debate 2024. It has been a pleasure being your host. Until next time, keep it here on CNBC Africa. I am Abi Agena. Happy holidays.